What is up, everybody? Welcome to Recruiting is No Joke, episode 2. I am here with, I was here with Adam.
Ooh, we're working now.
Man, you made it just in time. So this is Adam Walters. He is the head of talent at Polygon, which we'll get into. But excited to have you on the show, man. Good to be here. I wasn't sure what was going to happen then, what was going on, but I'm glad you made it. How's everything going today?
I think you thought I bailed last minute. You were like, I had him, and then he was gone.
Hey, I've had some horror shows with some of these lives. I was telling someone the other week who had some problems with like a streaming platform. I once went live with one of probably the biggest guests I've had on the show, and I realized, and this was maybe a year and a half ago, but I realized like 20 minutes in, I hadn't even clicked to go live. And so then I randomly hit it, and you could see it. Like, you could probably see it now where it says live with the time. That popped up, and I don't know. It was kind of smooth. So I'm glad that didn't happen anyway. So welcome.
We're here. Cool. Let's do it, man. I'm super excited to do it. You know, it's so funny, man, when you kind of make that decision that I'm going to be active on LinkedIn. I'm going to be in the small group that actually creates content. And it really is kind of like this small community, and we all see each other and we all communicate. And that's kind of how I felt with you over about the last maybe year and a half or so. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it is crazy. It's like you can interact digitally, and then you actually get in conversations with people, and sometimes you're pleasantly surprised. Sometimes you're like, wow, this person's way different than online. But But for everybody who isn't connected with you, why don't you just share with us a little bit about what you do, a little bit about the company as well. You know, and then we'll get into it too. And then people I know already have been commenting as well. So if you're out there, let us know where you're calling from. I guess it's not really a radio show, but just let us know where you're from. And then if you have questions, Adam's going to be a great resource here, I think, for anyone who's interested in fintech or interested in startup life, recruiting. Definitely going to have a lot of answers for us. So, Adam, why don't you go ahead, give us a quick intro, and then we'll get into it.
Sweet, man. Yeah, so I'm head of talent at Polygon.io. I don't expect anybody to know what that is unless you're into trading or into the fintech startup world. But yeah, so essentially what we do is we create stock data APIs, plain and simple. We started by Quentin Pike, our founder, back in 2016. He kind of started this as a side project, and it really wasn't even supposed to be Polygon.io. It wasn't supposed to be what it is today. He was starting a totally different thing. He just needed the data. That was it.
Okay.
He goes out to get the data. I'm going to try to make this super simple. Then he's like, oh man, like, why is this data so hard to get? Also, this is not real-time data. Also, this is really expensive. So as an engineer, it was kind of like, how can I make this easier for me? And in turn, it's going to make it easier for everybody else. Turns out he had something. He's like, I could probably go to market for this. He did the seed round. 2 years later, did the Series A. Now we're 6 years deep into this thing, and I came on 6 months ago as their head of talent. It was basically co-founder was trying to get a few things off of his plate. Trying to get finance off his plate, trying to get talent acquisition off his plate. We need to hire all these engineers, but my plate is overflowing. I need somebody to do this. Input me. And kind of like anybody in the startup world, just because you're the head of talent, for me, that can mean a lot of things. You're wearing a lot of hats, so to speak,
Yeah. So how did you get connected with these guys?
It was, kind of like us in recruiting. The best candidates are the ones that are not looking.
Oh, that's a hot take. No,
that it is a hot take, but let's take the climate of the bazillion layoff posts that we're seeing right now. That was kind of me, man. I was just minding my own. I remember the day. It was like 7 o'clock. Peter, co-founder, reached out to me and was like, hey, I like what you're all about. Can we hop on the phone? And literally, Joel, I kid you not, my instinct was like, it just happened in like a week period where I got a lot of inbound messages. And I was like, another one of these messages. No, but I was like, it's kind of cool what they're doing. He's not a recruiter. He's the co-founder.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll hear him out. I was watching a movie with my kids. I stepped outside for 10 minutes and took the call. And that's just kind of what started the ball rolling.
No, I love it, man. So what about in terms of your background? Obviously you've been doing recruiting for a while. So kind of walk us through with like how you got started in recruiting, because I'm always curious about that. And then the brief overview of how you got into this position, because I think obviously you see head of talent, like you said, obviously that can mean a lot of different things as well. And but I'm always just curious how people got from like a start in recruiting to where they are right now. So if you're able to just
I think you've posted a GIF before of somebody just like stumbling down some stairs or something into recruiting, and like that's exactly how I got into it. It was never, no kid grows up thinking like one day.
Yeah.
My kids mine do not.
Yeah, no, your kids probably want to be a chiropractor instead.
Yeah.
You got to show this. They show where this is coming from as well, because otherwise it's not going to make sense.
Okay, I don't know. Get my camera to work here, but look at this guy. So yeah,
that's what
watch the chiropractor of the family.
Well, when I jumped on, I'm like, what is going on? I love it.
What's happening? What got me into it was pure happenstance. I've been in tech sales while I was, kind of like a lot of people I've met in tech sales have had, their own businesses, their own startups. I've done all of that. I think I put in my LinkedIn profile like 3 times failed founder. Maybe I'll be a 4th one day. Who's to say? And I had just done the tech sales thing for a while, and I was just I was really good at it, but I felt like, I was only ever as good as my last month, and then my kids were starting to get older, and I was getting to the point where I just wanted something different. I just wasn't that fulfilled. And I had thought about getting out, and my brother's in tech, and he had mentioned to me like, Adam, you love people, you love selling. Why not just like merge the two and try that out? And I had this like weird view of what recruiting was. It seemed very behind a desk, like pushing paper, HR kind of thing. And then when I got into it, it was anything but. And it's kind of like, when maybe you're dating somebody and you get the warm and fuzzies at the beginning. That's kind of how I felt that with recruiting. I was like, wow, this is nice. This is fun. It really is playing to all of my strengths. So I started out at Focus IT, so I kind of went right into tech recruiting. I had actually applied for the role. They turned me down, and they came back a month later, and they were like, "You actually interviewed so well. We're going to create a spot for you." And me and my former manager are still great friends. We still joke about that today, about how he turned me down during our first interaction. From there, I went to the RPO world, had a really good time at Hub Recruiting, got to work with the branded team startup in New York, had a really good time. And I had thought I was going to stay there for a while. I had just really enjoyed being able to hop around to, hey, I'm going to spend a few months at this company, build their eng teams, build their product teams. And then once I get bored, I'm going to go to another company and do the same thing. And I thought that would be my progression with Hub. And then I got the opportunity to come to Polygon, and I was pretty much told from the forefront that, this is a position for somebody who has to be comfortable not having all the answers. Has to be comfortable with, really, you can't just pop into your boss and say like, hey, can you help me out with this? Because my boss doesn't know jack squat. Can I curse on here? Sure. My boss doesn't know anything about recruiting, right? That's why he hired me. Like, hey, Adam, do this. If you don't have the answers, figure it out. So that's kind of where I'm at in Polygon, and it's been interesting. But I've always felt like I had a unique voice in recruiting, an authentic voice, and an approach that I always felt would be a better way. And I've got to implement that, which has been pretty cool.
So, I mean, you mentioned a couple of things there, but just so not everybody's going to be familiar with the term RPO. So, I mean, maybe just chat a little bit about, what an RPO is, like what your role was. And I'd be curious too, just to know, because I've talked to a lot of RPO recruiters, really in the past year that have been adamant that like, hey, I'm on the RPO, so I'm embedded into the recruitment team. So now I can do internal recruiting, but I'd be curious just to know, like, obviously in your world, like how much of a difference it was being, embedded in these teams, but still on the vendor side. And then, compared to what you're doing right now, like what's been the biggest difference for you and even the biggest challenge for you too, making that switch?
So in the RPO world, it's really unique. So like me working for Hub, Matt Corbett, CEO, founder of Hub Recruiting, he's a wonderful mentor. I learned so much from him just in the psychology of interviewing. The guy could teach a master's class on taking a candidate through the candidate experience. It's phenomenal. He's built a really cool culture at Hub Recruiting. What's unique about that is when you're in that world, like me, say I got put on the branded contract, you're also a part of their culture, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you're a part of the Hub culture, and the two are very different. So it's like on one side, not to say one's better than other, but like I liked Hub better than branded, but I'm working at branded for this time period. What was cool about that is for everything you're going through, you kind of have the RPO behind you that has your back. You've got a team of 100 recruiters that are probably in similar situations with other companies that you can lean on for support, which was cool. So it's kind of like, hey, like I'm having this issue. Is anybody having a similar issue? I'm sourcing for this role, hitting a brick wall. Does anybody have anything? And you have like a massive resource in your Slack channel.
Yeah.
And then it worked out great for people who just want to bounce around, or for some people, they end up being lifers. They go in, they work a year, and they have the opportunity to convert. That happened a lot with the company Toast in Boston. Hub does pretty much most of their recruiting, but they do convert from time to time. Hub works for Airbnb and a few other like mainstays that are open to conversions. But for some people, they don't want to convert. They only want to hop around. They know that if they work somewhere for a year, 2, 3 years, they're going to get bored. They'd rather work for 4 or 5 companies in 1 year. The biggest difference in coming to where I'm at now is, we're a fairly small company. We have 26 employees. We're growing. Everybody in the company is an engineer, with the exception of your boy, right? I can talk the talk. I just can't really walk the walk. I know enough to get by in recruiting. So with that has come a good amount of challenge. There's nobody to lean on. You just got to figure it out. I feel like I do well in that role. I like not having all the answers, but I can see somebody coming from maybe a larger shop who's used to staying in their lane would just feel like they're drowning, for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. And like I said, I just heard a lot, from people who are, in RPOs, like, oh yeah, I could easily make the transition. So I was just curious, even for their benefit, to know kind of what those differences would be. But I know we got a lot of people out there, so I want to just get to some of the comments here. So I just wanted to say hi to Masafu, Khalid, Ahmad, Randy, Marlon, Keely. Great to see you. Keely said she is, let's see, we'll pull it up here. She said, trying to break into sourcing or recruiting. Thanks for hosting this episode. It's a challenge, right? Because I do think that most recruiters, really up until maybe the last couple of years, it just seems like there's been a sudden interest, and maybe it's just an echo chamber that I live in on LinkedIn. It seems like a lot of people want to get into recruiting, but so many of the leaders I've spoken to, it's like accidental, or they just happen to get an opportunity to be in recruiting. But I always love hearing those stories. But Keely, if you are interested in in getting into recruiting, I suggest just connecting with people like Adam, people like myself, networking as much as you can. Because I will say, like, entry-level recruiting, it's tough to break in, especially if you wanted to go internal. Agency might be an option, like one of these RPO options that we've been talking about could be a good option. We got Sarah out there as well from Minneapolis, Joanna. We got Dave, who is he's from Chicago, and he's mad that I'm a Liverpool fan. So for anyone that's watching, I am a Liverpool fan. Adam, I don't know. Are you like a sports fan? Are you a soccer fan? No.
Not really. I don't keep up with it. Sorry, not your guy.
No, that's all good. And then we got some. See if we got any questions here. It said, let's see. Keely said, "I've experienced recruiting as part of all my jobs. I really enjoyed the portion, so now I'm wanting to do it full time. Plus, I really enjoy utilizing DE&I." Yeah, look, it sounds like you're really passionate about recruiting. So, like I said, DM myself. I know we might have some openings about Harwell, and then connect with people, connect with as many recruiters as you can online as well. But
bingo,
yeah. Go ahead. Any other advice on that?
For anybody like that, networking and just putting yourself as part of the conversation you can't join the conversation unless you start talking. So, just let it know what you're trying to do. There's so many backdoor avenues, I feel like, to get into this world without hitting apply.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, what about, like, I know one of the big things that comes up all the time is like, how can people break into tech and how can people break into startup life? So obviously you're kind of you're in the midst of it right now. So, I mean, like, what advice would you have? Like, what are some of the things that you notice from, candidates that are reaching out to you, or, just people who are reaching out to you? What are some of the things that you would advise for people just to, like you said, get into the conversation? Like, what types of things would you recommend people do? And, have you helped anybody kind of transition into tech or in the startup world? I'd love to get your advice.
I would say be careful what you ask for. When it comes to like getting into the, I feel like people who haven't been in the world might not know what it's all about. I know one thing from Polygon that we've had a lot of applicants, a lot of candidates that have been sourced that want to get into our world, that want to go into a Series A, a Series B, they want to go in for the equity. They want to go into, maybe this is the next unicorn, blah, 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 blah. And I'm sure it's not just us, but I know that our engineering teams, especially for looking for mid to senior level engineers, we just don't have the bandwidth to train like a big shop would. Not that we expect somebody to come in and like hit the ground running. We just don't have the bandwidth for a training department like a larger organization would have, who can like maybe pair you with, we can pull, John and Susie off of this project to get you ramped up for 2 weeks. We don't have the bandwidth. We kind of need somebody who can come in, assess the situation and jump in with the team. So, those junior candidates are going to have a tough time. Maybe you're 6 months out of boot camp and you're in your first full-time role, but you want to make the move to the startup world. For a company like Polygon, it's going to be hard for us to bring you on.
Man, well, I love how straight up you are about that, though, because I do think obviously there's different narratives that go on LinkedIn in particular, which aren't always helpful. What about in terms of like the own challenges that you face in recruiting? I mean, obviously you mentioned a lot of people might not know who Polygon is. So as head of talent, and you're working with a company that doesn't have the same brand that other companies out there have, like Amazon, a Meta, the list goes on. I mean, how are you competing with that, and like how are you kind of facing the talent market with how competitive it is? Like what are you doing to overcome that, and how are you approaching that problem?
Just getting creative. We're never going to compete with, the big shops in terms of compensation. We can't do it on a base comp level. We can't do it on an equity level. We can't do it on a benefits level. There's just like, other than culture, what do we got? So for us, it's getting creative, whereas what we can do is tap into our customer base, and our customer base are developers. They're all engineers. If you're using our APIs, you're an engineer. You're not Adam working in talent acquisition. And if you're not an engineer by trade, you're one by hobby. So what I like to do is, we can tap into that resource of like, if you're a customer of us, you're using our APIs. What would it look like if you were to work for us? You clearly like our products. You know how to use our products. You already know how to use our APIs. Where are you working now? So that's been one creative sourcing strategy that we've had. Is just tapping into our own customer base. That's thousands of customers right there. You can go to YouTube right now, search polygon.io, and you'll get 3 or 4 pages worth of people doing demos on our projects. Those are potential engineers for us.
Yeah, man, I love that. That's a really smart way to go about it. What about in terms of, kind of managing that top of funnel with just, are you using LinkedIn Recruiter? I mean, what are some of the tools that you're using? And obviously, I know there's different levels of, especially when you're starting out. I mean, you don't have, all the funds to invest in all the tools. So what are some of your go-tos, and what are you doing?
Our biggest spend is LinkedIn Recruiter, which I got an email saying they're raising their prices. So that's cool. So LinkedIn Recruiter. Everything else we're using is going to be free. Of course, we're sourcing through GitHubs. We're, a lot of the best engineers have their own websites. They're doing demos of our products. They're kind of plugged into our ecosystem already. But our biggest spend, 100% LinkedIn Recruiter, and just trying to get creative on there. We're not mass messaging. We're not copy and pasting. We're not sending out bulk messages, nothing like that.
What about, with the market, how it is right now? Obviously a lot of layoffs. I mean, has that been a good opportunity for you guys to capitalize? Have you seen that, in terms of, has that kind of helped at all? I mean, because that's kind of what I've heard from different people saying, okay, well now, for example, if we're hiring recruiters, like there's so many recruiters on the market, but is that really something that's been helping? Have you seen a change with that, or is it just as challenging as ever?
I haven't. And that's speaking purely from polygon.io. It's not, I'm not a Home Depot TA guy who's looking to hire 50 people. That's speaking from my experience with the roles that we're hiring for. It hasn't played any role.
I mean, there's more talent, right? I mean, that's
for sure.
The thought behind that. But I mean, to me, I can almost see, especially if you're in the stage that you're at, where you're still pretty fresh. You just received that Series A funding, so if you're somebody that's just gotten laid off from a company that maybe was in that position not too long ago, I wonder if the sentiment is going to be, okay, I don't want to jump into something similar.
100%.
So
100%.
I'm curious, like, how you vet out. I mean, you kind of talked a little bit about like what you look for, and obviously finding people who are familiar with you, customers, but let's go a little bit deeper than that. Like, obviously every hire that you make right now is so critical. So like, how are you vetting out people who are going to be committed to what you guys are building? And like, how do you find that out through the interview process? I'd be curious to know that.
So I'll let you kind of lift the veil on our hiring process. So what we do is, if it's a really good candidate, sometimes we'll skip the initial hiring manager interview and let's go straight to the technical. If I feel that hey, like this person has the chops, let's shorten what we can. Otherwise, we're going to a hiring manager interview. Then we're going to do a technical assessment. It's a live coding session and an environment that they're comfortable with. We're not going to ask them to come in and do something in Golang when maybe they're a Python developer. So, it's a 1 hour live technical assessment. And then our final round is going to be a team interview. And that's where they get to, not only, communicate with the engineering team that they'd be working for, but also our CEO. And it's a great opportunity to see if like, hey, like, yeah, that team's a good fit for me. Or maybe the team's like, yo, Adam, we don't know if we really like this guy that much. We just spent an hour with him. The vibe's not there. And what we do is kind of, once they pass the technical assessment and they go to the team interview, we kind of throw it into the team's hands. And it's kind of like, it's like 5th grade all over again. Heads up, thumbs down. Do you like him or not? Do you want this guy to work with you? And we let the team make the decision.
So what about, I mean, are you hearing a lot of Or do you get a lot of people drop out at that assessment point? Because I've, definitely heard from different candidates in the market that are not willing to go through those tests. Like, have you seen that, or are
I
most candidates
always,
already? Yeah, go ahead.
I, I always preface it with like, Joel, I don't want to send you a technical assessment and you don't want to do a technical assessment. Can we agree on that, right? Nobody wants to do it. Do you have any production level code you can send me just to vet your skills? Anything. If they can, we're more than happy to skip over that. But if they can't, which happens a lot because maybe I'm with XYZ company and I have NDAs, my GitHub is full of them, but they're private repositories and I can't give you access to it. That happens a lot on the back end side. On the front end side, it's kind of different because front end engineers are more showy. Look what I've done. So we can generally kind of skip over that on the front end, but the back end, odds are they're not going to have anything that they could give us. So we got to do the technical assessment.
Yeah, obviously, it sounds like you can pretty much flex on your process, which I love, by the way. And I think that's a great way to just differentiate yourself in the position that you're in. If you can flex on any part of the process and make things quicker or just move people along. But I mean, what are some of those major challenges in terms of actually getting people on board? I mean, how are you overcoming, the competition that's out there, salary and pay, obviously, which it's going to be obviously a challenge with any startup. How are you coming up against that?
It's tough, man. I mean, even, we just hired a front end engineer. I'm not going to say his name.
Are you guys fully remote too, or are you hybrid? Where you guys landed? What'd you say?
It's fully remote. It's fully remote. Our office in Inman Park in Atlanta. If you're in the Atlanta area, it's a badass office. You're welcome to use it. The C-suite's in there every day, just about. We have a few people that live around our area that kind of pop in there, but otherwise it's fully remote. We don't care where you're at. We do ask our engineers to be available during Eastern time, correlate with the U.S. equities market. If there's any issues with any of our products, it usually happens during trading hours. That's our only ask. If it's a West Coast candidate, you need to be available during trading hours. It's tough. Even if we get to the offer stage, candidates still aren't sold. We're still having to kind of go in there and sell them on, Polygon and why this could be a really good step for their career. I'm generally pretty good at that, and not blowing smoke. What I tell people is I give them why Polygon has been good for me and my family. And I can only speak to my story. And if that's good enough to sway you, then so be it. I'm definitely not going to like blow smoke up their ass and tell them like, this is going to be the best thing ever. You're going to make the most money you've ever made. And, it's not that. I'm going to give them the real of it and tell them my story. And hopefully that's good enough. But yeah, I mean, I feel like people who come to us are coming because they have the opportunity to, there's so many verticals in our business that nobody's taken ownership of. So the opportunity for growth here is huge. We're looking to hire an open source team. The ability to come in and kind of lead that team is wide open. If that's an interest of you as an engineer, we have an opportunity for that. And, I tell people that during the interview process. I can't tell you what it looks like in 1 year, but I can tell you what our roadmap looks like for the next 6 months. And, if you have some interest that, fit into those verticals, then you're going to do great.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that. Well, hey, look, man, I know, I think we were scheduled for like half an hour here. So I want to keep within that 30 to 35 minutes as well. But I love the insight here. And I think I'm always just curious, like from the inside, because obviously I've sat on the agency side of the world, which you have as well. If there's one thing, that you would say to an agency recruiter that's looking to make that transition, or, really anybody that's looking to go into internal recruiting, I mean, what kind of advice would you give them going into it? And what's like the biggest, in your mind, the biggest difference between, particularly going agency to internal, and what advice would you have for people? Because I get that question all the time. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, no, for sure. If you're going in any type of leadership capacity, it's being able, but also being educated on how to educate others on the recruitment process. I know when I came into Polygon, I came in during my interview process, they actually had an outside agency sit in to kind of vet me out because the founders didn't know anything about tech recruiting. They're engineers. So they needed somebody from the recruiting industry to kind of sit in and say, yes, Adam would be capable. So I would say just being able to, not only do the job, creating a great candidate experience, but teaching internally your current staff what it means to have a really great TA department. And I think that gets forgotten sometimes because everybody's so focused on the candidate experience that they forget the experience of everybody else that is currently already working there.
Yeah, I love that, man.
That goes back to, like, just because somebody's hired, like, the candidate experience doesn't end there. They're still part of the candidate experience up until the exit interview. God forbid you have to do it.
I mean, honestly, that's, I think, a big piece that I think agency recruiters just don't think about is, onboarding. I mean, and I read a stat recently that, poor onboarding, it's like a 90% chance that someone won't last for 6 months at a company. And I think on the agency side, like, we're always so focused on filling the positions and, getting that top of funnel, getting as many conversations lined up, headhunting, if we want to keep it simple, which is obviously, it's an important part of recruiting and it's massive. But there's like this whole other side that I think happens when you go internal and you start seeing like the onboarding and the candidate experience and
for sure. Yeah.
Keeping those relationships alive throughout the rejections, even because you just don't know if that person's going to be a future candidate, which I do think on the agency side, like, you kind of get that because you're building longer term relationships. But even just like you said, onboarding, I just read something the other day that like a lot of internal teams are slipping up because they're so focused on getting the person to offer and accepted. And then there's this window of time where people are just dropping off nowadays. And it's like almost at that point, you almost want to up the communication. You want to make sure everything's really smooth, continual check-ins.
For sure. No, I've heard of candidates going through multiple onboardings in a single time. And the one that's the smoothest is the winner.
Oh man. There'll be a new consultancy around that in a year's time, like onboarding or an onboarding consultancy. But anyway, well, I love it. I appreciate your time. And where can people find you? I know you're posting on LinkedIn. Are you active anywhere else as well?
No. LinkedIn's about it. Hit me up on LinkedIn. You're probably not going to find me unless you're lurking on GitHub. LinkedIn's it.
Come on, man. I know you're on TikTok. Don't lie to me.
I am on TikTok. I deleted my videos. I'm starting over.
No, I love it. Well, awesome, Adam. I appreciate your time, man. It sounds like you're doing some amazing stuff at Polygon as well. And anybody who's out there, if you are in the market, if you're interested, definitely connect with Adam and follow his content as well. He's posting a lot of good stuff. And
awesome.
Yeah. And then next week, I don't know who we got lined up, but we're going to have someone awesome as well. So check in. Same time next week. And again, Adam, appreciate you being here. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. And let's just say goodbye to a couple people here. We got Rosa. Let's see. Rosa said, thank you both. We got Tim. Christina said a band's coming up. I think that was when you made the comment about LinkedIn raising their prices. Sorry. No, all good. And then look at this. Adam Posner, if you don't follow him, he said, who's that slick dude on the left with the cool hair? He's talking about me, I think. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you. We'll talk soon. And everyone who's out there, thanks for tuning in. And we'll be back next week. See you guys.